Hey guys, well, before I actually get to the review of this episode, a little bit of disappointing news, if you're not already aware. Main 6, the developers of Fighting is Magic, on Friday they received a cease and desist from Hasbro's lawyers, which basically meant that they had to end the development of Fighting is Magic, which basically meant that they have to now shut down development of Fighting is Magic, and the project, I suppose, now has been abandoned. So that's pretty disappointing news. It looks like Fighting is Magic is not going to become a reality now. There is a petition being run at the moment to try and sort of get Hasbro to go back on this demand. They're trying to get 100,000 signatures on it. I suppose they're going to send it to Hasbro and try to convince them to go back on this decision. I personally am not particularly optimistic that this is going to make any difference at all, but it's worth a try, and every little helps. So I will put a link in the description to the petition. I'll put a couple of links in the description blog post that Main 6 made on Friday, and also the Equestria Daily entry about this, if you're not familiar with this bit of news. If you were looking forward to the game Fighting is Magic, I highly recommend you go and sign that petition. So anyway, games Ponies play. This was the sort of other side to the story that we saw in Just for Psychics. It isn't really a sort of interlinking story in the kind of way that I was kind of hoping it to be, but it is a story that happens at the sort of same time. And it's about, obviously, the main 6. The first one was sort of more a Spike and CMC episode, and this one is the sort of main 6. So they're, in a way, in these two episodes, incorporating all of the main characters. That's kind of cool. So yeah, they go to the Crystal Empire to try and win them the Equestria Games. I don't know if maybe this is my incompetence at reading up on what an episode is about beforehand, but I actually thought this was going to be about the Equestria Games themselves. I thought, this was going to be like Four Weather Friends. It was going to be kind of a sporty kind of episode. We were going to see something like the Olympics in this, but no, it's just them trying to win the Equestria Games. Possibly we will see the Equestria Games themselves in a Season 4 episode, who knows. But anyway, this was kind of an interesting idea, trying to sort of impress some kind of impartial judge that this is a good place to host some kind of big event. That's the kind of thing you do see quite a lot in reality. You're trying to sort of butter up a place, and convince them that it's really kind of nice, and it's obviously somebody who's judging their every move. Very kind of interesting to see what they do with that. As it turns out, they kind of resort to what is another kind of kids TV show cliche, which is misunderstanding or mistaking somebody for somebody else kind of thing, and the whole episode it's just kind of them showing around the wrong pony, and we know the whole time that it's been a misunderstanding. I kind of saw it coming, actually. As soon as we see the pony that they think is the Equestria Games Inspector, I think to myself, now that's not her. She doesn't feel right, she doesn't look right, and then we see a couple of scenes later, it's not her. So that was a little disappointing. That I was hoping they weren't going to go down the road of what is kind of a done sort of plot, the misunderstanding kind of plot. You see that a lot in particularly in kids TV shows. That disappointed me. The good thing about this, though, was that there was kind of an interesting kind of take on it. This green-haired pony, I'm going to call her, because I don't recall her ever actually being named in the episode. I could be wrong about that, though. So I'm just going to call her the green-haired pony because, she has green hair. No, green hair! Not green hair! It's such an awful, awful colour! Okay, enough with the rarity impressions. But yeah, she was really amusing. I really liked her character. She was very sort of lively, very sort of comical. She kind of, in a sense, reminded me of Pinkie Pie, with her sort of claustrophobia that she seemed to be suffering from throughout the whole episode. And it's kind of weird the way she comes across as kind of a jerk in the first couple of seconds we're introduced to her, and then she turns kind of nice and kind of sort of upbeat and kind of bubbly. It's, that abrupt change of heart when she suddenly sort of realises, oh, they actually want to welcome me. It's kind of nice. I don't quite follow this idea of welcoming the Equestria Games Inspector to the Crystal Empire using ponies that aren't from the Crystal Empire. Let's show them how great the Crystal Empire is by having them be welcomed by somebody not from the Crystal Empire. I don't quite follow that. I don't quite understand how that works. But nonetheless, it's a way to get the main 6 into the story, and it works fairly well. It's sort of a main 6 episode, but it does sort of feel more like a Twilight and Rainbow Dash episode, actually. They do definitely play the main kind of role. Kind of disappointing, really. We're not going to get a Rarity episode this season, and Rarity is the one that very much out of the main 6 takes a back seat in this episode, so that was disappointing. I think really, throughout the entire season, there's only really been one episode where Rarity's even played somewhat a kind of major role, Sleepless in Ponyville. So this entire season has really been a big sort of FU to Rarity fans, such as myself. It also does sort of seem to me like the plot to this episode is the sort of main plot when you compare it to Just for Sidekicks. Just for Sidekicks, by comparison, does seem like very much the sort of B plot to it. So why was Just for Sidekicks shown first? You know, I think this could have been a much more interesting kind of pair of episodes if we'd seen this one first, although, admittedly, there are a couple of spoilers to Just for Sidekicks in this episode. But yeah, it does seem kind of odd to me that they show them that way round, because this does definitely seem like the more momentous and more sort of gripping and more kind of interesting kind of plot, really. You know, Just for Sidekicks seems like more a kind of sort of little kind of story, where it's more about just sort of enjoying the events that are going on kind of thing. Showing this green-haired pony around the Crystal Empire, you know, it was kind of sort of somewhat enjoyable, or at least I thought it was the second time watching the episode. But the first time watching, I was kind of just sort of thinking to myself, can we just get to the point where they figure out that they've got the wrong pony, really? Because it's you know, we as the audience are told quite early on that it's the wrong pony. Why can we not just have them find out as quickly as possible? It's kind of a thing that annoys me about the sort of misunderstanding kind of cliche that you see in a lot of stories. You just sort of know at some point they're going to figure out what's gone wrong. There's been a misunderstanding. You just kind of want them to get to that point. But actually, re-watching the episode, I started to appreciate a bit more what was going on during that period before they figured out they had the wrong pony. It was quite a nice little bit of comedy, and obviously Dave Polsky really seems to understand writing Pinkie Pie, and you know how much she is just in there just to add her bit of comedy now and again. Some bits in it, I've got to say, even for Pinkie Pie, felt a bit unnatural. I know that's kind of weird because, you know, Pinkie Pie is that kind of character where it just does sort of seem like anything she does, you know, you can just sort of go with it because she's Pinkie Pie. But no, even for Pinkie Pie, some of the things she did here did seem a bit unnatural. But one thing that was definitely not unnatural for Pinkie Pie, and I absolutely love, is her "No!" Which is, oh, I'm just answering Twilight's question. It's a great twist on a little cliche. And then later on, you know, even funnier, where she goes, "No!" again. It's like, wait a minute, no. Yes! Turning the tables kind of thing on that kind of cliche of, instead of yelling no, she yells yes. I love that. And then towards the end of the episode, another great Rainbow Dash moment. I've got to tell you, Season 3, while it's been a big sort of FU to Rarity, it's been awesome to Rainbow Dash. They have really sort of brought out the goodness in her character and really sort of put her in a much better light in this season. And this was another great moment for her, where she steps in front of Twilight and she takes the blame for what's gone wrong. It's a fantastic, awesome moment there for Rainbow Dash, you know, to take the blame for what's happened and, you know, to sort of feel responsible for costing the Crystal Empire the Equestria Games. That's a fantastic moment there for Rainbow Dash. And then the ending is kind of, again, a mixed bag for me. It's kind of nice that the Equestria Games Inspector sort of takes on board that they have been very welcoming to this green-haired pony, and appreciates, you know, that even though it wasn't her they were welcoming, you know, it's kind of nice that they've welcomed at least someone in a nice kind of way. I do sort of wonder to myself, has she actually figured out exactly what's gone wrong? You know, what's happened exactly? You know, she has figured out that they mistook the green-haired pony for her, and therefore she was the reason they gave her this great welcome. Or does she just sort of think, oh wow, if they just give some random pony who's just here on vacation this kind of amazing welcome, then they must be perfect to host the Equestria Games. I don't know, it's never made particularly clear whether or not she actually does sort of figure out that that's what happened. But again, it does sort of go back to this kind of puzzlement I have over the idea of having the main six welcome the Equestria Games Inspector to the Crystal Empire when they're not from the Crystal Empire. Wow, these 6 ponies that aren't from the Crystal Empire were so welcoming, so I'm going to give the Crystal Empire the Equestria Games on the basis of these ponies from Ponyville. I mean, I don't know. Again, it's not made particularly clear whether or not she knows that the main 6 are not from the Crystal Empire, so... But actually, it'd be pretty obvious whether or not you were from the Crystal Empire, because you'd be a crystal pony, wouldn't you? Well, except Cadence and Shining Armour aren't crystal ponies, and yet they're the rulers of the Crystal Empire. But yeah, actually, you would think that the Equestria Games Inspector would be able to figure out that the main 6 are not from the Crystal Empire because they're not crystal ponies. And yet she thinks that these ponies not from the Crystal Empire being so welcoming to this other pony, which she may or may not have figured out they mistook for her, is a reason to give them the Equestria Games. I don't know, it just seems a little bit sort of sketchy and doesn't quite add up to me. However, this episode was a lot of fun at the same time, a lot of sort of great bits of comedy. I kind of felt like Rarity was wasted. Applejack and Fluttershy somewhat wasted, but it's a nice kind of moral to sort of, at the same time sort of wanting impress as much as you possibly can, and then it turns out you sort of make a mess of it, but you can sort of make the best of a bad situation at the same time. And perhaps also a little bit of a theme throughout the episode of, keeping calm under pressure as well. So there's a lot of little nice moments in here, a lot of sort of little bits of comedy. It's only really the sort of plan to impress the Equestria Games Inspector really that kind of bugs me about it. Other than that, it is relatively enjoyable. I was kind of pissed off at the misunderstanding cliche that is in this episode when I first saw it, but watching it again I've come to realise they do a decent job with it. It's been done before, but they do it perfectly fine here. This is much like Spike at Your Service, the kind of plot in a kids show that has been done quite a bit in the past, the misunderstanding. But they do it well here, which is not something I really thought about Spike at Your Service. I didn't think it was done particularly well. But here, they give it a nice sort of new kind of twist and give it their own sort of ideas. And yeah, it's been done before, but here it is done well and done in a new kind of way, which is not something I would have said about Spike at Your Service, if I'm honest. It was a satisfying episode, not like a personal favourite of mine or anything, but it has a decent number of laughs in it, and it was an enjoyable enough story. I kind of did see a lot of things at the end coming. You kind of knew the Crystal Empire was going to get the Equestria Games. Would have liked to have seen it tie together with Just for Psychics a bit better, really. I would have liked to have seen those episodes sort of intertwine a little bit more. Really, it's only the beginning and the end where we see any kind of events from Just for Psychics in there. And I don't understand why this wasn't shown before Just for Psychics, really, because this does seem like the more sort of important story. But otherwise, fairly good. Probably a 7 out of 10, I would say. Okay, guys, I will see you next week for the Season 3 finale. And after that, proper sort of scripted reviews of every episode from Season 3. So I will see you soon, guys.